Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Ms. Campbell, would you call the roll for us?
Mr. Hannigan.
Here.
Mr. Derman.
Here.
Mr. Luke.
Here.
Mr. Harrell.
Here.
Mr. Nation.
Here.
Mr. Jeter.
Here.
Mrs. Seeley.
Present.
Mrs. Drucker.
Here.
Mr. Betancourt. Mr. Womack. Mr. Hersey. Mrs. Mullet. Mr. Kuzan.
Here.
Mrs. Belisario. Mrs. Hines.
Here. Thank you very much. Would you please stand and join us in the invocation and pledge led by Mr. Nation?
Before we begin in prayer tonight, I'd ask that we pause for a moment to remember one of our former principals, Billy Ferrer, who passed away recently, and to commend him to God's mercy and gracious keeping. Let us pray. Gracious Father, we give you thanks for the life and the service of Billy Ferrer, for his dedication to the education of the children of this parish, and to supporting parents and educators in the various roles they have in educating our children as well. We ask that you surround his family as they grieve, and his friends as they grieve their loss. We ask that you receive him into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints in light. And now, Father, we ask that you be with us this evening as we gather once again to make good and proper decisions as we support the parents of this parish in the education of their children. Guide and direct us in all that we do. Support our teachers as we begin, and our faculty as in our administration as we begin this new year. And all these things we pray in your most holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're not going home. Don't be acting like you're sick.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. We appreciate you leading us in the invocation and pledge. I'd like to welcome you all to our first meeting of 2018, January 4th, the committee as a whole for Human Resources and Education. I'd like to also inform board members that we're in the process of switching to board docs. So at your seat, it looks a little bit different this evening. We will be doing our votes by voice vote because we're in the process of changing our screens. So if you'd be aware of that, this evening we'll be taking voice votes. We did not have anyone sign up requesting time on the agenda, so we'll move to our approval of the minutes from the committee as a whole meeting held on December 12th, 2017. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes? A motion by Mr. Derman and a second by Mr. Loop. Do we have any comments from board members on the minutes? Any comments from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So ordered. We'll move on to our instructional portion of the meeting. First, this evening we have a report on JAG, National Student Leadership Academy in Washington, D.C., and we have Dr. Sanford for that report.
Good evening, Superintendent Foltz, Mrs. Hines, board members, and guests. It is my pleasure tonight to showcase the recent accomplishments of 4 exceptional students from our district. Job for America's Graduates, also known as JAG, is the nation's largest high school dropout prevention and recovery program. JAG provides an educational setting for students to promote academic and skill attainment, civic responsibility, leadership development, and social awareness, all necessary to become a responsible citizen and secure quality entry-level jobs leading to career advancement opportunities. JAG delivers a unique set of services to eligible students to earn a high school diploma. The program also provides early experiences in foundational skills, especially for career development. JAG program grants are funded by a combination of state national and private funds. Currently, St. Tammany has 3 JAG programs. These are located at Salmon High, Slidell High, and Fontainebleau High. An essential part of the JAG program is leadership development. To that end, our JAG students participate in the Louisiana State JAG Leadership Conference, where, among other experiences, students get to run for state offices by conducting a campaign. Students who are elected to these offices receive a grant from the Entergy Corporation to attend the National JAG Student Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. It is my pleasure to announce that 3 St. Tammany students were elected to JAG statewide offices. And I think it's important to note that there are 6 state offices. So St. Tammany Parish has 3 of the 6 offices. Additionally, 1 student was awarded a local scholarship for exceptional leadership. I'm introducing these students. They will come up to the podium later. Gerard Marquez. He is the JAG Louisiana president. He is a junior at Fontainebleau High School. Peyton Sneed. He is the JAG Student Senior Vice President for Leadership Development. He is also a senior at Fontainebleau High School. Darion Ducree is the JAG Louisiana Vice President of Career Development, a sophomore at Fontainebleau High School. Leona Collins, the JAG Louisiana State Representative, a senior at Salmon High School. And last, Alexis Hill. She is the JAG Salmon Career Association Officer, a senior at Salmon High School. These students were accompanied to Washington, D.C. by their JAG instructors, Jeff Boren and Eric Dubuisson. During their trip, these students attended leadership sessions, toured many important D.C. monuments, met with Congressman Steve Scalise and his chief of staff, and I was told was also on the same flight with them, and they toured the U.S. Capitol. Additionally, they received a personal tour of the White House from Fontainebleau High alum Drew Walker, who is currently on staff at the White House. We have a picture story Channel 13 has prepared. At this time, Mr. Foltz, would you come? And students, when your name is called, please come to meet with Mr. Foltz, receive your certificate, and take a picture. Gerard Marquez, Peyton Sneed, and Darion Ducree with your JAG instructor, Jeff Boren. And the next group would be Leona Collins. Alexis Hill cannot be with us tonight, and the JAG instructor, Eric Dubuisson. So with that being said, you can see that we now have 4 of the 6 state officers with us here tonight representing the state of Louisiana, St. Tammany Parish, and their respective high schools. These students had quite an experience in Washington, D.C., and I would just like to offer the opportunity for either one of them to give us just a quick experience story. Anyone? Awesome. We're going to put them on the spot for their leadership abilities.
All right, y'all. My name is Gerard Marquez. I'm the president, and I just wanted to share my experience of writing my name on the wall in the secret underground tunnel. It was actually really cool because now if anyone else goes on there, they'll be able to see my name on the wall. And I also wanted to share my experience in the Holocaust Museum. Oh my gosh. It was actually, I learned a lot that I didn't know in school, and it actually hit me pretty hard when I found out what actually happened in the Holocaust. And it was a good experience to see all the museums and the monuments there. Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Do we have board members who would like to ask any questions? Okay.
Thank
Well, we appreciate your leadership on the local, state, and national level, and we're very proud of you all, and we know that you're representing us well through the JAG program. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is standardized testing. We have Ms. Myers to give us that report.
Good evening, Superintendent Fultz and board members. Tonight I will be sharing information with you about our 17-18 standardized testing program. Standardized testing itself does not drive our instruction, but the academic standards are the roadmap that lead our students to developing the knowledge and skills needed to be successful in their lives. If we believe that all students can achieve, then we must measure their progress to ensure they remain on track for the next grade level and ultimately for college and professional careers. The Louisiana state standards define the knowledge and skills that our students are expected to learn in each subject and in each grade. The standards are designed to provide a clear path for students to gain the proficiency that is required to learn increasingly complex material in the next grade. Students who learn the knowledge and skills defined by the academic standards year after year are on track to graduate from high school on time and are ready to enter college or the workforce. The Louisiana state standards define what students need to know, but not how students learn or how teachers teach. Teachers use those standards to develop lesson plans, assignments, and assessments that help students master the knowledge and skills defined by the standards. Assessments and standardized testing data provides our teachers with valuable information about students' learning needs. They allow teachers to use the results to guide their instructional planning in the classroom. And they provide valuable information for our schools so they can focus their professional development efforts for teachers in the areas that will benefit the students they serve. Our schools have been busy preparing for the upcoming standardized testing throughout the school year. On a daily basis, our teachers ensure that their instruction is high quality, rigorous, and aligned to the Louisiana state standards. Teachers administered the LEAP 360 diagnostic assessment in September and the mid-year benchmark assessment in December and January in their efforts to obtain student performance data to help them align their instruction to meet the students' instructional needs, as well as to monitor their students' progress toward the mastery of those standards. Karen Ketty, our district testing coordinator, presents standardized testing information and protocols at several district testing in-services during the school year for our school testing coordinators. This helps ensure our schools are prepared for the various tests and testing formats in the spring. Teachers administer the LEAP 2025 practice tests to their students to prepare them for the upcoming standardized testing. The practice tests allow students to experience the testing format prior to the real thing in the spring. The practice tests also provide valuable information to teachers as they provide their daily instruction to students in preparation for the upcoming LEAP 2025 tests. School computers and computer labs are prepared for the online LEAP 2025 testing requirements to ensure that they are ready for students to use during spring testing. School administrators and school test coordinators develop their school's testing schedule to meet the requirements of the online and/or paper-based testing formats. They also ensure that students requiring testing accommodations as specified on their IAP, their LEP, or IEP receive the appropriate small group testing environment they need. On this slide, you can see an overview of our 17-18 testing schedule. The LEAP Connect is testing for special education students as specified on their IEP. LEAP Connect has replaced LA 1 this school year. ELPT is the English Language Proficiency Test for our ESL students. ELPT replaced the ELDA test this year. Both LEAP Connect and ELPT are administered during a window of time between February 5th and March 16th. The ACT is given to all high school juniors on March 20th. LEAP 2025 for grades 5 through 8 is an online test in ELA, math, and social studies. The science test this year is a field test and will also be administered online in grades 5 through 8 during that same testing window, which is between April 9th and May 4th. LEAP 2025 for grades 3 and 4 is a paper-based test in ELA, math, and social studies. The science test for grades 3 and 4 is a field test this year and will also be paper-based, administered during the same testing window from April 30th to May 4th. The EOC LEAP 2025 for our high school students is administered in an online testing format. LEAP 2025 for high school students includes tests in the following subjects: English 1, English 2, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and U.S. History if the student is not a senior. The LEAP 2025 high school exams are reported in 5 achievement levels. The EOC exams for high school students include testing in the following subjects: English 3, Biology, and U.S. History if the student is a senior. And they are reported in 4 achievement levels as in previous years. The LEAP 2025 high school exams will be replacing the EOC exams in the coming years. The EOC and LEAP 2025 online exam testing window is from April 23rd through May 18th. So, are you ready to take the test? I'm just kidding, but at your seat, there is a packet of sample test items similar to what our students are presented with during testing. It's just for your, if you want to look through it at your leisure, but we wanted to share that information with you. The sample test items are from the State Department LEAP 2025 practice test and released test items. Our teachers use these sample test items to guide their instruction and to assess the students' readiness for standardized testing. This packet gives you a glance into what our teachers are striving to prepare their students for throughout the year. You will see that each sample test item is aligned with the Louisiana state standards, which drives our teachers' classroom instruction. Our goal is to help our students to master the standards so they are prepared for the next grade level and ultimately able to graduate from high school on time. Tonight we present you with the updates to the district testing policy, which you should have at your seat as well. Just to point out the main primary changes within that policy is just pointing out that LEAP Connect is replacing the Law 1 alternate assessment for special education students as specified on their IEPs. The ELPT, the English Language Proficiency Test, which replaces the previous ELDA test for English learners. ELPT is administered to all English learners in K through 12th grade in an online test. And then LEAP 2025 is the new term for the Louisiana Educational Assessment Program, which includes all standardized testing for grades 3 through 12. In conclusion, our district testing program is critical to ensuring that each of our students are on the right path to being successful learners in the classroom every day, as well as being prepared to enter college or the workforce upon their graduation from high school. This concludes our 17-18 standardized testing presentation this evening, and I'd like to take a chance to recognize Karen Ketty, who is here tonight. She is our district testing coordinator, who is a tremendous asset to our district. We appreciate all she does for our district and our schools throughout the year to keep them updated on the latest testing requirements. And with that, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Terry. We appreciate the report. There's, it's a lot of information on testing.
Yeah.
So we're going to queue up for questions from board members, and we're going to start with Mr. Betancourt.
How fast do you get the results back from these tests?
Okay. They start coming in at the beginning of the summer, but I'll let Karen answer that because she knows when they all start. They come at various times.
Any specific tests you're interested in? For the LEAP 20, for the 3 through 8, they're going to come in June. The high school test, anything that's considered still EOC, and for Algebra 1, geometry, which she said was Algebra 2, it's really geometry. English 1 and English 2 will be available within 5 days after the student take it in the spring. The only results not coming back before the summer for high school will be the U.S. history because it's a new a test.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Kuzan?
I have two questions. Number one, you mentioned in preparation for the testing that the small group testing, is that a remedial type practice testing? Or is that, can you explain that to me?
When students are placed in small group, it's because they have an IEP, an IAP, or a LEP accommodation. And it's 8 or more students within the testing environment, And it could be because students are placed there because they are just easily distracted, or they just need to be in a smaller environment in order to take the standardized test. But it is specific students who qualify that are placed in these small groups when they are tested.
I have another question. The end of course testing will no longer be given in high school, the EOC?
It's phasing out. English 3 will be around for one more year, and actually, they phase out for what the high school requirements are. It'll always be around for the students who are required to pass that specific test, and they can come back later on at my office and take it. But as soon as English, next year's seniors are out, the schools will no longer give the English 3 test at all. EOC biology will be field tested next year, and once that happens, it will turn into a LEAP 2025 test. U.S. history is the one that's going through that change now. We have both an EOC at U.S. history, and the reason why we're keeping it is because seniors have to have the results in order to graduate. So the standards to set the results are not coming back until the summer. So they're keeping that test specific to those seniors only. Anyone else taking it will take the LEAP 2025. And after this year, EOC, U.S. history will no longer be available.
Thank you.
Mr. Hennigan.
Thank you, Mrs. Hines. A question for either of you. Wonder if you could compare and maybe contrast the LEAP test for high school versus, say, an ACT nationally standardized test. I mean, they go after different things, huh? Can you talk about that?
Correct. They go after different standards because the LEAP test is based on Louisiana standards, whereas ACT is a nationwide test. But ACT's formatting is changing to look like what the LEAP 2025 is, whereas you no longer are just giving an answer, you have to be able to explain why you're giving an answer. So it is different, but it is the same.
Okay. And does LEAP test more kind of facts and memory? I mean, do you think? Or is it the same?
No.
No, okay.
And the samples we gave you show, you'll see students have to explain in writing their answer. They have to use multiple skills. A lot of times it's multi-select answers they're picking. It's a lot different than when we took the test many years ago, where it was all just multiple choice. You'll see a lot where the students have to type out their answer and explain how they came up with their answer.
Every component of the LEAP 2025 ELA, math, science, and social studies has a writing component.
Okay. I guess last question, does the teaching method influence, you think, the performance on this test?
I'm not going to answer that one.
I would say that the teachers in the classroom have to do more of allowing students to be able to explain the answer rather than selecting a correct answer. So they have to scaffold the students' knowledge in that respect, that they have a conceptual understanding and can explain their answer. The test is going away from knowledge level.
Okay. I mean, are there keywords they're going to have to know and be able to come
They
back?
still have to understand some basic vocabulary
Yeah.
in order to get the answer, the most points for the answer, yes.
Okay. Well, very good. We'll see how we do. Thank you.
Mr. Nation.
Thank you, Mrs. Hines. Thank you, ladies, for the presentation tonight. Just a couple of, or 2 or 3 shotgun questions. One, following up on Mr. Hennigan with the, when you said about the writing. So this means the kids, I guess, will have to have some keyboarding skills as well as writing skills. So are those those explanations, are they, I mean, I'm sure there's a rubric or something somewhere that, who's grading that, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, multiple choice is either A, B, C, or D, but if you've got a paragraph, obviously somebody's got
There
to
is
read
the
that.
same company that scores the task. They do it. It's called data recognition, who the platform is through. And remember, we did this online last year, so the students are aware, and we have gone through the keyboarding training more this year than last year because we are better prepared to take it this year than we were last year. But there are, just as in the past, when the paper pencil went to Minnesota's where I shipped them all off to, there are teachers that are hired through that company, and it gets scored by two people, and if their responses to the results are not equal, then a third party is brought in to also. So it is being still scored by humans, the writing component.
Gotcha. And how long are these answers? I mean,
It just depends. There's some short responses, and for the ELA, there is a longer writing composition in which they have to do. But most of them, it is just a short response.
okay, and that leads me into my next question. Then how long is the testing? I know the testing window we have in front of us, but in the course of a day, how long do our kids have to be sit for testing?
Well, let's just talk about the test itself and one individual taking the test.
Okay.
When we took the paper pencil test, just to get this little perspective, we would test, and it wasn't really timed, the LEAP test, prior to the new LEAP 2025. We would test, let's say I was at Fountainville Junior, from 9 in the morning until lunchtime. So that's about 4 hours of testing. 5 days a week, that's about 20 hours of testing. Whereas the LEAP 2025 is timed, and the max time is 14. So even though it doesn't look like we're reducing the testing time, we actually are. They have to end within a certain amount of time. They don't have until the end of the school day to complete the test. So it's about 14 hours that they are testing throughout the 3rd through 4th grade throughout the week, everyone else throughout the testing window.
So,
And it is divided into parts.
Correct.
okay. So for some kids, that's going to be, I guess, an additional pressure. Then they'll have the time.
That is correct.
Okay. And then remind me that some of the LEAP tests are, for some grades, are make or break for passing. Is that correct? Or am I wrong about that?
That's for another conversation.
Okay. But that's true, right?
It was in the past,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. And then who takes the LEAP Connect? What
Those-
grade level?
That is your more severe special ed students in grades 3 through 11.
All right. And last question, Mr. Harold's kicking me under the table. Which leads into the ACT. When we say all students take the ACT, we literally mean
All 11th graders that are
All,
in St. Tammany
regardless.
Parish are given a test on March the 20th to take
right,
the ACT.
including students with.
Not our Law 1, not our LEAP Connect, but all
Okay.
the others, yes.
Got you. Very good. Thank you. Which, I guess, let me just say one other thing, is because our ACT scores keep going up, thanks to you all and to our faculty out there. I mean, that just, to me, is a great testament. I mean, that because all our students take the ACT.
Yes.
And that score keeps going up, and that's why, for me, it's unfair when we get these comparisons between us, Louisiana, and say Massachusetts, where only a small percentage,
Correct.
Take
It's
those
not
tests.
statewide, correct.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Nation, I'll just tell you that I recently had a conversation with a retired teacher who taught both in Louisiana and Florida, and she was trained, she was an, if I'm not mistaken, English language arts teacher, and she was trained to do the scoring of the test and read and scored those documents. I thought that was, interesting. So, all right, let's see, Ms. Drucker.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hines. Questions for you ladies. For the LEAP Connect, does the 504 also apply for the special ed?
No, it's strictly special ed students.
So 504, any students that apply 504 does not get any special privileges?
No, they don't take the LEAP Connect.
They
They
don't-
do get their accommodations for the regular LEAP 2025, but they do not take the LEAP Connect test. It's a totally different assessment.
Okay, but they do
For the 504 students that have an IEP that specifies that they get testing accommodations, they will get those testing accommodations for the test, but they do not take the LEAP Connect.
and they take,
That's just on the regular LEAP 2025 test.
okay, so for the LEAP 2025, they will get 504 accommodations?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they are covered.
Yes.
Because I didn't hear that. Also, in regards to the explanation in writing, when the short answers and all that, do you have any, I have questions as far as subjectivity grading. Do you have any issues with that?
Yeah.
for short answers?
Yeah,
The expert scores are given a rubric, and they have keywords and content that they're looking for in the answer. And they, as it was stated, they have been specifically trained for that purpose.
So with that in mind, short answers versus multiple choice, I'm always thinking that it will take longer to grade. Will it take longer to grade these tests? Because they're short answers.
They're built into the testing window of whom we've received the results back.
All right, and that, I mean, with all that subjectivity, and to me, consistency with different people grading, that's the only question mark that I have. Because when multiple choices, it's either A, B, C, or D versus short answers, and that's,
One of the things that the testing company does provide for our teachers are sample student responses so that they can get a feel for the look-fors in an appropriate response with the actual score there, so they can do a comparison of what might get a 2, 1, or 0 points.
okay, very good. So our kids are getting taught on sample responses?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. And then as far as our piggyback on Mr. Nation on our ACT for all juniors, the test is on March 20th. Do you know when we get our results for that?
And they usually arrive around 4 weeks after.
4
That's
weeks.
when the students get their results. We will not get the district results until July.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Womack.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way you describe this thing in the sense that it's not solely based on conventional educational knowledge, that you make exceptions for students that require smaller groups or whatever in order to have a fair shot of getting correct answers. It almost sounds like it has elements of an IQ type test to a degree. Would that be accurate or not really?
No, sir. If a student has accommodations built into their plan, action plan, that is the standard practice that even in the typical school day that we would do, say for example, if a student gets test read aloud, all of their instructional outcomes for test read aloud are accommodated in the classroom. So when it comes to standardized testing, they have to take it under the same conditions that they're normally treated in the classroom.
Can you see just a little bit, though, how I could perceive that it might be based on things like that?
It's the same test. So I guess I'm unsure of where the confusion is, because it's just they're given the same exact accommodations
Yeah.
that they would receive otherwise.
Just exceptions made for the need for more time, maybe?
Not necessarily exceptions, but following their IEP so that we're in compliance even for standardized
And
testing.
that's federal requirements that we have to follow the IEP for those students.
Right.
So if it's specified in their IEP that they need those accommodations for testing, we have to, because of federal law, provide those. But it's not like they just get them during that testing window. They get them all throughout the year.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like they just all of a sudden the day of testing get extra time or get tests read aloud. It's done throughout the year because it's required in their plan.
What you already know about the
Yes.
specific students.
And
Yeah.
Mr. Womack, that is no different from the ACT. For example, with the ACT, if a student has a 504 plan or an IEP, those accommodations are allowed, even certain ones, on the ACT. So,
See. Thank you. You more than answered it sufficiently for my little mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Caddy and Ms. Meyer. We appreciate it. Ms. Meyer, I really appreciated your opening remarks about, why we have the standardized testing and how hard our teachers work to prepare our students for these tests. And we think they do a great job in that, and we're very proud of them. Thank you all. We'll move on next to our recommendation to accept the adoption of the parish-wide testing policy. Dr. Sanford's going to tell us about the changes in that.
And in your packets before you, you see that we have highlighted all of the changes in yellow. And those are predominantly just informational changes in titles. You will also see strike-throughs for things that we have tried to condense. There is no substantial change in the policy, but we need a motion to adopt our district policy so that we're in compliance with the regulation.
All right, do I have a motion? All right, Ms. Seeley has moved to adopt this policy, and Mr. Womack, or did you second it? Thank you very much. Now we'll answer questions on the changes to that. Could we queue up, please, Ms. Campbell, for Ms. Belisario? I see you had your hand raised, and do you have a question?
On page 8, I was curious, Roman numeral 2, is it not password protected at all, or is there some other method?
Could you speak up, please?
Okay, my mic is on. Page 8, Roman numeral 2. It's, the strikeout takes out getting a password, so I'm wondering if eDirect is password protected.
Yes, we receive codes,
Okay.
specific codes. They're not necessarily called passwords, but we
Oh,
have testing
okay.
codes.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from board members? If not, then I think we're ready to vote on adoption of the changes to the parish-wide testing policy, and we'll be taking a voice vote on that. So do we have any comments from the public on this? All right, then we'll move on to the voting. All those in favor of accepting the changes to the parish-wide testing policy, please say aye. Aye. Nay? Do we have any nays? Any abstentions? Then the new policy is adopted following next week's approval at the board meeting. All right, that brings us.
Ms. Hines, if I could,
Sure.
I see Ms. Saudia Blackman-Stokes came in. I know she was here, probably coming for the Salmon Jag students, I'm guessing. So since she came in the cold and from Slidell, and I'm sure there's traffic and stuff, I just want to recognize her and for the job that she's doing at Salmon, not only in the JAG program, but overall the work that's being done at Salmon. And I'm proud of her, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for joining us. If there's no further business, then I'll declare the meeting adjourned. We'll begin the business affairs meeting in 5 minutes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this January 4th meeting for the committee as a whole, Business Affairs Administrative meeting to order. And Mrs. Campbell, if you would call the roll.
Mr. Nation.
Here.
Mr. Hannigan. Mrs. Hines. Mr. Derman. Mr. Loop. Mr. Harrell. Mr. Jeter. Mrs. Seeley.
Present.
Mrs. Drucker.
Here.
Mr. Betancourt. Mr. Womack. Mr. Hersey. Mrs. Mullet. Mr. Kuzan. Mrs. Belisario.
Thank you. The invocation pledge were set at our previous meeting and will be dispensed with here. No person is requesting time on the agenda tonight, so we'll move to item 4, approval of the minutes for our meeting held on December 12th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve? Mrs. Drucker moves to approve. Mr. Jeter seconds. Any questions or comments from committee members? Any questions or comments from the public? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? All right. Move now to item 5, special recognition. Mr. Jabbia.
Thank you, Mr. Nation, members of the board. Tonight we have a special recognition. I'm going to ask Mr. Alfonso to make that presentation. Mr. Alfonso.
Mr. Alfonso, welcome.
Thanks to Mr. Foltz, the board, Mr. Jabbia, Mr. Kosei, and Dr. Sanford, and all those who are in attendance. At this time, I'd like to call up some individuals of the St. Tammany Parish School Board, Mr. Vince DiCarlo, principal of St. Tammany Junior High. Please come on up. Mr. Rodney Red Brady, school bus owner-operator. Mr. Brad Mascara, who on this particular day was performing as a substitute bus attendant, but he is a former bus owner-operator in our system. Currently, he's a certified sub attendant and bus operator. So, Mr. Brad Mascara. Two that are not in attendance I'd like to recognize is Ms. Jean Mitchell, who's a school bus attendant on Mr. Brady's bus, and Ms. Karen Dufresne, TRT at St. Tammany Junior. Ms. Lisa Lewis is in attendance also, is an assistant director, and Mr. Brady's wife, Ms. Gwen Brady, who is also a bus operator. Would y'all two please
Y'all don't
stand?
be shy.
Y'all
Come on down.
Y'all come on down. I'm sorry, Ms. Dufresne is here. I'm sorry. At this time, I'd like to recognize some valued employees of St. Tammany Parish Schools. These individuals not only exhibit outstanding work ethic, but also reveal impeccable values that any organization would be proud of. I have personally witnessed the professionalism Mr. Red Brady, Ms. Jean Mitchell, and Mr. Brad Mascara display on a daily basis. Their genuine care for all students that ride school bus 337 is contagious. In addition, their love of the children that ride Mr. Brady's school bus is evident every day. Mr. DiCarlo, Ms. Dufresne, Mr. Brady, Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Mascara live the message of the St. Tammany Parish Schools, every child, every day. Right now, I'd like to give just a sequence of the events that happened on that day. And there may be some minor details I'll leave out, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. On the morning of December 19th, Tuesday, December 19th, approximately 6:35, Mr. Red Brady was on his route. It was a very foggy morning, if you can remember. Right before Christmas, it was foggy every day. They were in a neighborhood in Slidell, and they spotted a 3-year-old little girl basically wandering the streets. And the little girl, when she seen Mr. Brady's bus, would take off running. Once the bus approached the little girl, one of the attendants stepped out and kind of cornered the little girl and corralled her to get into the bus. Once the girl got on the bus, they realized that the child wasn't fully clothed. Now, to keep in mind, please, this is a 3-year-old little girl. Mr. Brady then notified transportation and then continued on his route to St. Tammany Junior High. Once he arrived at St. Tammany Junior High, he alerted Mr. DiCarlo and his staff. Mr. DiCarlo and his staff, which includes Ms. Dufresne, took the little girl in and realized that she wasn't clothed. They went to the PE department, got a PE uniform. They retrieved some coloring books and colors, sat the girl down, and then went to the cafeteria and got her breakfast. At that time, Mr. Cole and his staff alerted St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office of the incident and what's going on and sat with the child until they arrived. The child was then reunited with her parent. Now, there's some other details in there but that's really what happened. And, it was a hectic morning, but, the staff really did a tremendous job, and we're very proud of it. At this time, I'd like to read something that kind of sums up, that Mr. DiCarlo stated, that kind of sums up the incident. During this time of year, we hear of so many tragic situations that end in heartbreak. Here we have school bus personnel performing their basic morning duties and have the awareness of identifying an unsafe situation on their route and perform the correct action to promote safety and the well-being of a little girl in a dangerous situation. Sometimes in our lives, we get caught up in the monotony of routine and don't realize how the slightest of a gesture or words can make a difference in the lives of others. That was a statement Mr. DiCarlo made after the incident and after they took care of the situation. So I would like to really commend them for their actions. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Kuzan to read the resolution commending the efforts of these individuals.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuzan?
Whereas in his career as a St. Tammany Parish public school system bus driver, Rodney Red Brady works tirelessly to ensure the safety of the students he transports daily on his route, and whereas in the early morning of December 19, 2017, Mr. Brady spotted an unsupervised child walking along the side of the road in the dark. And with the help and assistance from bus attendant Gene Mitchell, brought the child to the safety of the school bus. And whereas with the help of the transportation department, Mr. Brady brought the child to the school resource officer at the St. Timothy Parish Junior High School, and with the assistance from Principal Vincent DiCarlo and the St. Timothy Parish Sheriff's Department, the child was reunited with the parents. And whereas Mr. Brady and Ms. Mitchell identified an unsafe situation and performed the correct action to ensure the safety and well-being of this child, avoiding a tragic situation from happening. And whereas school bus operators and attendants are a critical part of the public education system, and in the event of an emergency are looked upon for their leadership and guidance. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the St. Tammany Parish School Board hereby acknowledge and applaud the extraordinary efforts of Rodney Red Braley and Gene Mitchell. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the official minutes of this board, with a copy being sent to Mr. Brady and Ms. Mitchell in appreciation of their efforts for every child, every day, and I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Unanimous second has been requested. Any questions or comments from board members? Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Jabbia.
I'll be the public today.
Yeah.
This resolution was done kind of ahead of time, and I just learned that Mr. Mascaro was on the bus as a substitute. I surely would like to add this to the resolution with the approval of the board, and be able to put that for also to go with him.
All right, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Jabbia. Well, before we go, I'd like to hear from Mr. Brady. Would you like to say anything? I hate to put you on the spot, and certainly you're under no obligation, but I'd like to hear from the hero. Heroes.
None of these people wanted to come tonight. They was glad they did a good act, but they didn't want to be recognized. So I really have to say that.
Any other bus driver had done, you know? I mean, she's out there in the fog, you know, running, you know, so somebody had to get her.
Right. Very good. That's perfect answer. Thank you. All right. All right. Not seeing any other comments from the public, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? So ordered. Thank you. All right, Mr. Jabbia, we'll move on to consideration of school board policy, section G.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. In your packet is School Board Policy Section G. We did have our work session in December, and these are the policies that we're putting forth for recommendation from you tonight.
All right. Mrs. Mullett moves that we approve School Board Policy Section G. I believe Mr. Loop seconds. The floor is now open for discussion, so we'll, Ms. Campbell, we'll just use our board up here. There we go. Just in case anybody has anything they'd like to say. There we go. Anybody want to speak? All right, good. Very good. Any comments or questions from the public regarding section G? Not seeing any comments from the public. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jabbia. We'll move on now to your reports.
Thank you, sir. Your monthly maintenance and custodial report was sent to you electronically. Mr. Singletary is here if you have any questions.
All right, any questions regarding the monthly maintenance and custodial report? All right, moving on.
Monthly risk management report is in your packet. Mr. Gaspard is here if you have any questions.
All right, not seeing any. Moving on to item C.
Monthly transportation report. We had a good report from Mr. Alfonso, but we have an additional one in your packet. Any questions, he's here.
Okay, not seeing any there. All right, thank you, Mr. Jabbia.
Thank you.
All right, move on to Ms. Tipton for our monthly construction report.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. I just have a short monthly construction report. At Pearl River High, preparations are underway for the move from the temporary modular classrooms and administration into the renovated and new areas of the school. We want to thank maintenance, custodial, and IT in advance, and actually they've been working even before Christmas towards this plan to move next week. So they're there now, and they'll be there a lot next week as well. At Fontainebleau Junior High, final inspections are underway for occupancy of the 50-wing building. The contractor is working on dismantling the temporary modular campus setup. The new library is being set up and opened at Abney Elementary. At Lancaster Elementary, the work is progressing well, and the work to the changes on the chiller were done over the holidays. The epoxy flooring is being installed in the gym restrooms and locker rooms at Slidell High, and sheetrock is being finished in the new classroom and east entry areas. At Mayfield Elementary, the flooring is being completed in the two-story classroom building, and the bleachers are scheduled for installation next week in the gym. They're also planning to start the exterior grading work and completion of the parking area. At Mandeville Junior High, the flooring is installed, the woodwork has been delivered, and the last 2 windows are being installed. Contractor is also preparing to install all the window sills. The final slab pour is planned for the end of this week or early next week, weather permitting, at the pupil appraisal building project site. Repairs to the wood structure are complete at Bayou Lacombe Museum. The contractor is working on installing the new beadboard similar to the original throughout the classroom areas. And the new projects for Madisonville Elementary and Mandeville High additions are being reviewed by staff relative to budget considerations. And summer projects are being finalized, and the projects are being completed to put out for quotes and bids for this spring.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Tipton? Okay. Recognize Ms. Seeley.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. I would like to thank you so very much for working so hard on the project for Pearl River High School for that renovation. And it's amazing that with the weather that we've had, that it's remained on schedule. And just thank you. And thank you to the staff that's helped you with this and everyone involved, all the stakeholders.
Thank you, Ms. Seeley. And certainly that's a big team effort between contractors, subcontractors, the administration, and students and staff, and architects and engineers. A lot of people involved, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Seeley. Mr. Derman.
Thank you, Mr. Nation, and I apologize to my fellow board members, but this was a question that should have came in the other section, and it just deals with the recent cold weather, and if we had any problems with any of our schools with pipes or anything.
We had a couple of issues, but it's not major pipes, water fountains and stuff like that were outside. No major problems, caused no interruption with the classes. So we were very fortunate.
Mr. Jebby, why don't you share what we asked our principals to do on their time off and how we
During the
appreciate
holidays, we were in communication with our administrators, instructing them to walk their campuses a number of times, all classrooms, and report back to me. So they all emailed me back on Tuesday to give me the status of their buildings and if there were any issues. And maintenance was tremendous in all of this because I know they were out hustling at the different little things that we had going on. But again, nothing major.
I appreciate that update because, I just know with the weather and all the facilities that we do have, it's important, that they be workable for our students. And I know it takes a great team effort, and I just wanted to acknowledge that because of the cold weather. There's a lot of districts that aren't as fortunate and had to close. So I just wanted to acknowledge everybody that helped, make sure everything was functional. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as all of you know, our offices were open on Tuesday. So it was a good opportunity for us to be able to communicate with all of our administrators to make sure we were ready to go on Wednesday morning.
Right. And also thank those bus drivers out there
That's
driving
right.
in that cold weather.
We've
It takes a
concerned
while
about
to
those
warm
diesel
them
engines
up.
and getting them cranked. Thank you, Mr. Derman.
Thank you, Mr. Derman, and I agree that Mr. Jabby, you use the word fortunate, but and I understand what you mean when you say that, but it's a lot of dedication and a lot of planning, and So thank you to you and your team for what y'all do. Mr. Womack.
Cameron, no pun intended, but with Mayfield, you said we've got the bleachers they're working on, the grading. Do you have an educated guess as to when the completion date will be? Will this go into the summer?
Oh, no, sir. We anticipate that they should finish somewhere here in this first 9 weeks. They're very close
Really?
to completion.
That's terrific.
They had a couple of things that they had to work through, but everything's on track now to finish up.
That's great. Y'all doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. Anyone else? Mr. Kuzan.
Yes, sir. I'd like to go back and thank Mr. Jabby for his work and his staff did on the school board policy, Section G. It's a lot of work that he's put in on that, and I just want to go back to that. I missed the opportunity to thank him, but I want to thank him and his staff for all the work that he's done, not only on Section G, but other sections that you worked on very, very hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzan, appreciate that. And I appreciate the board members' work on this too, and coming to the work sessions really helps us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Ms. Tipton. Mrs. Prevost.
The November financial report is in your packets, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions regarding the financials? All right, I'm hearing any. B, item B.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, did somebody have? Oh, Mr. Hennigan? You sure? Okay, all right, sorry.
The purchasing report is in your packets, and Mr. Stevens is here to answer any questions.
Any questions regarding the purchasing report? Okay, not seeing any with that. We'll move now to announcements from the president.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. The continuation of the tenure hearing will be held Monday, January 8th. That's this Monday coming up at 4 p.m. And everyone that was at our first hearing, please let me know if there's something that comes up. But we should have everyone back on Monday at 4 p.m. Also, the regular board meeting will be held next Thursday, January 11th, and that will be at 7 p.m., but entertainment begins at 6. And those are the only two announcements.
Thank you, Madam President. With no further business to come before the committee, I declare this meeting adjourned.